Assignment 4. Assignment 4 is posted, and it is described exactly the same way as it was announced before. I provided backend, and backend is linked to assignment here. So you can, today we will download it and clone it, and it will be the first thing to do today. Download it and clone it, and I'll explain backend code so you know how to use it. You are not, definitely you are not asked to rewrite it. Don't touch it. If it doesn't work for you for some reason, email me. I'll figure out why, but it should work because I tried it on Mac, I tried it on Windows, it should work. And today I will explain it. So this is backend. So it is pet data service, and it is very, very simplified version of pet sitter service. In pet sitter, we had multiple tables linked different way. In this case, we have only a user table who are not necessarily pet owner because this is some of the users in fake data do not have pets. So it's technically not pet owners, but some of them do have pets. And we have a pets table, a linked one-to-many from user side to pet side. So one user can have more than one pet, so it's one-to-many, or no pet, no pets. So it is predefined. Don't change it to many, because if you do, I cannot really run it easily because it is different backend. So potentially such programs is not well defined because technically a pet could be owned by family. So in this case, more than one person. Or owned by one person, after this owned by another person. So, so in this case, it is questionable. But since backend defines it one-to-many, so let's stick to definition, right? So in this universe, it is one-to-many. I mean, in universe of this example, okay? So you are asked to write front end for existing backend. And this is specific to this assignment. Please make sure that you use Git and you commit your code before you submit. It is related to the way how we deal with Angular projects. Angular project is extremely large. You probably check folder size, it's like 200 meg. So zipping it and uploading to Slate simply won't work. Slate will tell this file is too large. So, and even if you are lucky and after zipping it will be smaller, it is still unmanageable because imagine like we have 30 students in the class and everyone submits 200 meg file. So for this reason, this assignment is submitted differently, not as just zipping entire project and sending it to Slate. It is different. You work on the project, and you commit your last version. You commit, hopefully you commit all, but I can check on the last one, in this case. Because I suggested procedure, how to do it, not suggested, I require it. So you commit it, last version, make sure it's committed. After this, you open terminal at the bottom of your IDE, you know this terminal tab, and you type git space archive -o space /a4.zip space head in capital letters and enter. And this thing, it's a git command to archive last commit. I will, in this particular example, I will not see your previous commits because I asked you to archive last commit. Right? So please make sure that when you work on this assignment, you definitely use Git, but you really must commit your last version of the code because what you submit is archived last commit. It's not the code on the screen. All right? Is this clear? Right. So for this particular example, it is critically important to commit, to do your last commit with what you submitted, because if you don't do so, you submit previous commit or first commit, because Angular commits it, makes first commit automatically, Angular framework. Okay. So if there is any questions about it, please ask. So in this particular, there is a Git. It is possible to do with Git to archive all commits in current branch and submit it similar way. But this particular code, what the command is doing only for last commit. All right. There is no way using Git to archive what you have on the screen before you commit, because Git doesn't know about it before you do commit. Okay. And commands to commit all, to archive all commits in the current branch is more complicated. It's not one command, it is a sequence of commands. So for this reason, I decided let's stick to simplest. So this is what to submit. So clone pet data service, we will do it in class, and I'll explain it. And see what it has. It has two tables, users and pets. And users are linked to pets of users, as one on user side and many on pet side. But some users do not have, in fake data, some users do not have pets. Some users have 1, 2, and some of them has like 4. All right? So make sure your program is not crashing for users that doesn't have pets. So, so be careful about it. Check, click on that link, that, and it shouldn't crash. In your case, in this case, it's up to you. You can just show empty table of pets, or say this display message, this user doesn't have pets. It's your choice, but it shouldn't crash. Okay? So for the first page, you display list of users. You display first name, last name. So it is first, for the first page, you use count, like 1, 2, 3, right, from the top. Second column, first name. Third column, last name. And fourth column, details link. When you click on it, it will take you to second page that show more data about given user. And table, so this is say, and table of pets belonging to this user. So it is explicitly saying table of pets belonging to this user, not all users in the system, only associated with the user that you display. Okay? It's up to you if you want to make more screens, like for example, screen all pets in the system or some other screens. But in this assignment, you are asked to do only two pages. One page, it is specifically list of users with link to details. And second page, it is details about user and table below that is listing all pets of the given user. Questions? So this is similar to, idea is similar to Flower example that I will explain today. Backend for Flower example is already explained. I will not re-explain it. I will just mention interface, so it will be easier to link in your mind what is on the screen with what is in the backend. So, and the same about the pet data service will be explained today from scratch. Right. Although it is similar to other examples, I will not really repeat things that was repeated many times. I will just point things that are different. Okay? Questions? If no questions, let's clone pet data service, and I will try to explain it as detailed as possible, because it is used in your assignment, and most likely it will take about half an hour. So it is probably till break. So let's clone this as usual. So I click it, and it goes to GitHub. Copy. Speaking about IntelliJ IDEA, if you install updates, it may ask you, do you want to use really new GUI for new version? And I don't advise you, because it says it's a beta version, it's probably unstable. Plus, if it is really new GUI, maybe it has things that we are looking for in different places. Okay. So I don't really advise you for two reasons: that it is beta, and second, it may things that we know that belongs to specific places in GUI, maybe it's in different places. This is the reason. So let's continue. So I'm cloning with get from version control system. I'm going to folder where I'm going to clone it, and then paste Control V. And when we clone, we make sure that we're creating a folder for it. Otherwise, it will mix stuff with existing folder. All right? So it is pet data service, clone, and it is Spring Boot project. Created, I will tell how it's got created. So trust project. So when I created this project, I selected H2 in SQL section, data GPA also in SQL section, and data REST in web section. So standard way how it was created for pet self-service the same day, the same. What? Link is inside of assignment itself. It's here. So open assignment, problem, clone this project, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why it's doing, oh, now it's not. It fixed it. It showed me warnings, but it was scanning it, and eventually it resolved warnings itself, okay? Sometimes it happens. So this was created as pet sitting service the same way. It has repositories serving RESTful data or JSON data, and it doesn't have a controller. It has a configuration file. I will explain what it's for. And it also has data initializer file to insert some fake data, so you have a fake data to display. Don't add data, because if you add data to your copy of the backend, I won't see it, right? Because I ask you to submit only front end, I will use the backend. When I grade your assignment, I will change data to make it obvious that it is real, so it's not hard-coded in the front end. Okay. So it is indeed coming from the server, so I will change name, so it will be obvious for me that it is real data, not hard-coded. Okay, you know what I mean. So let's look at structure of the data. So as already mentioned, there is a pet and user. Let's start with user. So I click user, double-click user, and it opens entity. And the table name is pet owner. I didn't change it as it was copied from pet sitter service example. Technically, not all users in this program are pet owners, potential pet owners, but not all of them pet owners. So I decided that ID generation is by default, it is, like not by default, it is what we typically do. It is integer starting with 1, auto generation. I have two columns, first name, last name, and I have a list of pets associated with the user, one-to-many relationship, mapped by owner variable in pet. So if we go to pet, we will see owner variable there. Where is that? Here it is owner variable that is referring to user table. Okay? And this is foreign key. This is owner ID inside of pet table. Yeah, I didn't specify table, but by default it will be pet, based on the name of the class. Okay. Going back to user, so I have one too many, and cascade type all. Cascade type all is really appropriate if we have ownership, because pets are owned by these users. And if you save this user, it will also save all pets associated with this user, which makes sense when you edit it. And when you create new user, you create user object, add some pets to it, and click save, and use save on user object, so it will save pets. And it will propagate not just save, it will also propagate delete. When you delete user from the system, it will also pull out all pets associated with this user. So cascade all is really appropriate for owner when entities are owned by another entity. Otherwise, it's kind of questionable. If there is no strict relationship like ownership relationship, cascade all will mess up your data because it will try to delete this list items in the list when we delete this item. Okay. So it is good for strict ownership relationship. There are cascade all, it means propagate all operations like creating new object in the database, new item in the database. It is persist, cascade persist, it will create a new item. A cascade merge, it is updating previously created item or creating new. Cascade delete, it is just propagate delete. If you delete user, it will delete list, but it will not propagate save. But for ownership, it makes sense to have all. Questions? And I also created constructor, default constructor, and constructor that takes three parameters, first name, last name, and list of pets. So this is how I initialize this database. I call this constructor with list of pets, and I call user, save on user. Since cascade all is defined for user into pets list, when I save user, it will save list of pets. So this is how I initialize the database. All right, questions? Next, let's look at pet associated with that. So I have entity and pet, table name is not defined, but if it's don't define table name, system will use name of the class. And since I call it this not as pet entity, but pet, yeah, it's kind of reasonable name, pet. So I have auto-generate ID for pet as well. Then I have a column defined as string pet kind that would be cat, dog, and whatever. Because it's a string, it is whatever you type. It is not enumeration type. I decided to keep it simple. So I changed this from pet sitters example where pet kind is enumeration. I decided this, okay, let's keep it simple. So strings, it's assignment. So hopefully everyone does it, okay? All right. Then I have a back reference to user, join column, and this is foreign key, owner ID, and it is going to user. And nullable false, it means pets must be owned, right? So it is a restriction, right, on the table that is created, not null. Okay, questions? So now it is getting interesting. I have a JSON getter on get owner ID. I already have owner ID as a field, right, join column, but it is field in the database. It is not, and it is also, yeah, it is field in the database, but it will not be served in JSON by default. By default, IDs are not served in JSON when we use repository. Service is created from repository. In order to enter IDs, like this ID, won't be inside of JSON. And this won't be inside of JSON by default. But having ID inside of JSON make your code simpler. Yeah, because you have more data, you have flexibility how to deal with it. So for this reason, I'm going around this default behavior by overwriting it. So I created JSON getter that is forcing additional data inside of JSON, and this data will be owner ID. So this is an example how to create data which is not provided by default, and in this case it is owner ID. Okay. And as you see, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be related, even database related. I could put some number there, fixed number, something calculated, right? So in this case, it's coming from, it's related to database because it is owner get ID, right? But it doesn't have to. So in user, I created additional data the same way. Get pet count. So use JSON for the user will contain field pet count. And in pet count, it's not even in database, because database contains first name, last name, and ID, nothing else. It doesn't contain pet count. But I could add pet counts to JSON by creating method inside of entity with and mark it JSON getter. Questions? So this is how to insert additional data into service provided by repository if this data is not necessary in the database. It is in database in the sense of list of pets is coming from the database, right? But user table does not have a field pet count, doesn't have a column pet count. So pet count is strictly calculated based on number of pets in the related table. Any questions? So this is overwriting default behavior for non-default behavior. This is not overwriting default behavior. It is how to stick additional data into JSON that is not coming from database directly. Okay. More. I already mentioned that IDs, these IDs, and foreign keys are not provided inside of JSON by default. So in order to go around this default behavior, I created get JSON getter for owner ID, right? In pet, and I need to do something about this ID. Unfortunately, JSON getter for this ID just doesn't work. I tried and doesn't. Okay. So creating JSON getter for this ID just doesn't do it. Okay, I tried. So how to deal with this issue? There is a standard way to deal with it, is to create configuration class. So I created REST config class that it has to be marked with either component or service, but something that is forcing system to process this class and create an object. It is implementing a repository REST configurer And I'm overriding method, configure repository, blah, 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 whatever. It's supposed to be overridden. And I explicitly said expose ID for user class and expose ID for pet class. So this program is showing IDs of items from the table explicitly. Unlike in other example, if you open pet service example, pet sitter example, you will not see IDs of those objects in table. In table you will see, but not in JSON. Why do I do it? Because having IDs may make front end simpler. And this is, you will see that actually I'm using it. It is possible to go around without using these IDs, but it is a little bit more work. All right, questions? There is one more piece. I want to, two more pieces. One more piece, it is data repositories. I have two repositories, and both of them are marked origins, and this is server and port for the front end. Okay, Angular client will be running on localhost 4200, right? And this is also Angular client by default will be running on 4200. Why did I write it on top of the repository? We didn't have it in other examples, but there is a reason for it. We had the example for dice roller when we had the service and JavaScript was consuming the service from the same project, right? Remember that dice example. When we had the dice roller service and JavaScript was consuming data from the service, and JavaScript was inside of the same project. Okay? What is the difference? That JavaScript was running on the same port, in the same server and the same port. In this case, it is the same server, but different port. And this is make a difference. So why it makes difference? This is specific behavior of JavaScript. If client is say, Android program or iOS program, the one that is using just native code, Android, iOS, or you write some Java for Windows and it's connecting there. It is not an issue, but it is specific to behavior of JavaScript running by browser. Browser imposes restrictions on JavaScript by default. It is security-related restrictions to make it, say, more secure behavior. Okay. What browser does? By default, browser does not let JavaScript to grab data, any JavaScript running in a browser, to grab data running on either different server or server, the same server but different port. It is the case, the same server but different port. All right. There is a way to go around it with extra configuration. But by default, browser will not let any Java program to grab data from a server, either different server or the same server with different port. All right. So if you want to allow it, it has to be allowed explicitly with extra configuration on the server side. In this case, I allow it explicitly for localhost 4200. So kind of restrictive. But this is what I want, what I did. Okay? Because if this is not present, it won't work. It is possible to do it otherwise with different configuration, but I decided just to, okay, let's do it brute force for Angular in this port. Right. So it is extra information. It may be already mentioned in some other courses, but if it's not mentioned, here it is. Okay. So it is to go around restriction of browsers that impose it on JavaScript. All right? Questions? So let's run it and see what it is doing. By the way, so it is starting, and you will see that it contains, when you go to localhost 8080, it will contain some index page. And this stuff is coming from file in resources static index HTML. So I don't have controller, but if you create index HTML file in static, it will be shown by default. And this is fav icon in the corner. It is this icon. So I will explain what it is. But before, let's look at the fake data. So I created data initializer class, marked it as service. If I mark it as component, it will also work. It has to be something that forces system to create this object. So it is component or service, even repository will work. But OK, let's stick to service for here. All right? So what do I have here? I have constructor with repository, user repository injected into constructor. I don't need a pet repository because I'm saving users, and see, user repository save Patricia. Right? I'm saving users, and a pets saving is cascaded down to list of pets. Okay? Because of cascade all. So I created how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 users only with different number of pets. So for example, for this, I create empty list of pets. And then I add it here. And you can add pets to the list afterwards, because it is reference. In Java, objects are referred by reference, but not copy by default. Not by default. All objects doing this. OK. I added empty list of pets to the user when I created user. And now I can keep adding pets to the list afterwards. Or I could add pets to the list before. It's up to you, because user object is storing reference to pet objects, to list of objects. Okay, so it is the same list. I add it to existing list, right? Because this is reference inside of user object. And I saved Patricia, so it propagated save operation to list of pets. The same for Lisa pets. In this case, we have only 1 cat. When you create list, you can pre-allocate it to exact number if you want it, but it is for optimization. If you leave it empty, it will be less optimal, but it will work. It will try to guess how many. It will pre-allocate 10 or something. But since I know how many, I set 2. Kimberly doesn't have pets, so I added empty array, because constructor expects there's something here. And Brenda has a lot of pets, 4 pets. So the same idea, creating new user Brenda with list of pets, and I adding pets to the list, and I'm saving Brenda. This is not necessary, but I added this. This part is forcing save immediately. Because GPA is keeping data in memory, and after this it is flashing. It is doing for optimization to interact with database quicker. So it tries to build stuff in the memory, and after this it is saving. And this is forcing save immediately, so there is no delay. There is no need for it in this case, because your program will probably start later, so it will be already in the system when your program is grabbing the data. Okay? Plus, also, repository is serving data from local memory, so it will, even if it is not in database, it's still in local memory, so this shouldn't be necessary. So it is just demonstration. How to force data into database immediately. Right. So let's look at structure of the data. It is for demonstration. So for example, to get list of users, address is localhost 8080/API/users. Where this folder API is coming from? We know how to create virtual folder if we use a controller, right? We write it's on the top. But we don't have an obvious controller here. System created controllers for repositories, but they're hidden from us. So we can do so if we go into configuration and edit REST-based path API. So this is creating virtual folder API. So now, for the first page, you need to display list of users, right? So this is how to get data for the list of users. It is from address API/users. Okay. And I already mentioned that I overrode default behavior, so now it is displaying IDs. So your code will be simpler if you use ID from this line, not from this, because if you keep it from this line, I'm not sure if it's simple or not. It's just extra option. Whatever looks simpler to you, you use. Okay.
So I did not get where did we come from users. So we configured the API, but the other part of the URL users, is it based on what?
What do you mean users? Users, yeah. Oh, good point. It is defined from name of the class, and it's made it plural. It is never, in JSON, it's never from columns or table names. It is from name of the classes. When we had exercise, in-class exercise with example like student data, we learned how to override, so we can change name of users here with something else with extra configuration. It is possible to override it. I think it's even on video. If you look up like introduction to RESTful services, example is called my student data service or something. It is when we started it. It shows how to change default naming convention. In this case, I decided to just use user, not user entity, because if I use user entity, it will be user entities as address, which is a little uglier. So I decided to keep it simpler. Okay? So this is list of users, how to get it. How to display it, it will be explained today in the second half of the lesson, where I display list of flowers the same way. Next, when you go to second page, you pass ID as a parameter to second page. So today's example will show how to pass ID between pages. So you pass ID to second page, and in the second page, you retrieve details about specific user using ID. So this will be address of user with ID 4, in this case, Brenda Clark. Okay. So you pass this ID to second page and build this address by joining ID and get the data. Another option, instead of passing ID, you can pass this. This would be entire address to get data. So ID, it is for extra convenience. It's not essential. because technically you can pass this piece. But in my opinion, ID is simpler slightly. Because this is a little harder to retrieve because it is object inside of another object, and eventually it's here. So I would advise you to use ID, it's simpler. Also, my example for flowers is using ID.
Is there a way to show the list of bits here whenever I ask for the users?
Yes. So it is it is one of the next pieces. So this is how to get details about user, right? API users 4, and this is details about Brenda Clark. Okay. Now, how to get pets of Brenda Clark? So this is probably a question. So it is API users Brenda Clark ID, pets. This will be pets associated with Brenda Clark. So for the second page, you do two queries. One for details and one for table. Okay? So data for details about user and data for the table. And data for the table is exactly the same display logic as this one. It is just coming from different address. In this case, it will be Brenda Clark's pets, because it has ID of Brenda Clark here. Users, Brenda Clark ID and pets. And she has 4 pets.
Is it possible to just try as users /pets without the ID?
All pets.
All users, all pets.
It will not be owner, pets owned by specific user, it will be all pets. And
I mean users /pets.
no, it won't have it. There is API pets. It will be all pets. If you say user /pets, it doesn't have ID, it won't do it anything. It will be error. So let's try.
Is it going to be all the users with all
No. No. It's error. It is possible to create a query, show all users with pets. Remember that we created, we learned that we can write method with query on top, right? So it is probably some kind of join operation between two tables to select users that don't have users that have some pets. Let's think about it, okay? It's not immediately obvious. It is definitely joint operation between two tables and some extra logic. So this is how to, this is not necessary in assignment. It is data about specific pet of Brenda Clark. It is in case if somebody wants to show details about specific pet of Brenda Clark as additional page, but it's not asked to. And in order to get all list of pets, it's also not asked in assignment. It is for extra if anybody wants to play with it, create another page for all pets. And details about this specific pet with ID 2, it happened to be Fluffy, cat Fluffy, and how to check owner, who is owner of a Fluffy. So it is pet /ID of a Fluffy /owner. This will show me that Patricia Johnson is owning Fluffy cat. Okay. So this is how to browse data with two related tables. So index page, it is for your convenience, for information how to read, where to find data on this server.